Welcome to Michigan Reimagined, presented by Good Marketing and Wagoner Financial. And here's your host, Chris Buck.
So many of us are there to cheer at ribbon cuttings or even groundbreakings and are excited about the new endeavor in our communities. But those behind the scenes realize it takes amazing partnerships and collaboration months, even years in advance to get a project underway. My next guests are here to share how some of the behind-the-scenes work that leads up to a project, materializing or not, and why it's so important. Our Brownfield Consultant for TriTerra, Mr. Connor Zook, and the Project Liaison for Revitalize, Mr. Reece Burton. Welcome to the show, Connor and Reece.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, right on. So, Connor, let's start with you. What is TriTerra? What do you do? And what types of contributions do you provide to the economic development community?
Yeah, TriTerra is a full suite environmental consulting company with services ranging from due diligence, industrial hygiene, all the way to brownfields, which is what I do. We have offices right here in Lansing, in Grand Rapids, Elma, and Brighton. We service all of Michigan and parts of the Midwest. Specifically, in the economic development sector, we help public and private sector clients pursue brownfield TIF, tax abatements, and grants.
Got it. To clean up contaminated spaces or make it construction ready and safe for the inhabitants after, right?
Correct, yes.
Right on, yeah. So, yeah, tax increment financing is a big player in making sure that we don't just keep gobbling up farmland.
Huge. Let's reuse the buildings we have.
That's exactly right. Great. Reece, what about you? What does Revitalize do, and kind of where are you located? When do you get established as a company?
Yeah, so Revitalize is a pre-development grant consultant company. We're a family-run business. We started in 2012.
Okay.
We're a small crew of 5, so not quite as large as TriTerra. We're based out of Mason,
okay.
And we help with all sorts of incentives for any sort of housing or mixed-use developments, from grants to helping with local incentives, looking at foundation support, working with the banks, architects, the other consultants involved with a project. We're kind of, a project liaison to all aspects of a development.
Got it. Okay, right. So, I mean, construction costs have gone through the roof, and I have a lot of conversations with people who have successfully gotten a project underway or completed, and they share the path that they have to walk down to make the capital stack work, right? It's like, it's like I'm going to build this and then rent it or sell it or whatever. But there's a gap. I can't build something for $500,000 and sell it for $300,000. That doesn't work. So how do I kind of figure out a way to make this economically work? And there's a million grants and tax increment financing and all these different things to go. So Revitalize helps kind of navigate those waters. You engage with developers and say, what are you trying to accomplish? And then you kind of share with them the process to get approvals for all the different things that they might qualify for?
Yep. In a nutshell, that's pretty correct. I would say, generally speaking, we work with emerging developers. So there are a lot of larger developers that do 200, 300 plus units, and they can back their own financing and they can make it work as far as economy of size. But when we're talking about the ma and pa 2 units in a small commercial building, it's a little more difficult to make the financial stack work, especially with, like, to your point, the cost of construction is just ever going up.
Right on. Okay. So when, so I was joking in the hallways that I was at a groundbreaking, as it were, yesterday. And so the world sees that as, this project is being announced, it's official, we're getting started, come out and celebrate that this is happening. But I suspect that there were conversations that led up to yesterday. Yesterday wasn't the start. So why don't you tell us a little bit about, on those types of projects, because I think you're both familiar with what I'm talking about, like, when do these conversations, when do you all get involved before the shoveling of the dirt that I experienced yesterday?
I think Reece knows what I'm about to say. It's the earlier, the better.
Okay.
It starts square one, due diligence. We're looking at phase 1. We want to know the history of the property, what we have to do to get to that brownfield point. So when we start, we want to, like I mentioned, get to know the history, but also what are the costs associated with a potential cleanup of a property, and we'll work that into a brownfield project. So like Brick Row, the wall breaking yesterday, we were involved with that project, and that is, from the start, they're formulating their capital stack. We're working brownfield TIF into there. What portion do we play, but also what costs are we looking to capture in that redevelopment?
Right on. And some of that, I mean, that's obviously decided as a go, no go before the acquisition of the asset even occurs, right?
Yeah.
There's a building that's empty that is for sale, and someone has an idea to buy it and understands what the asking price is and the idea of what they want to turn it into. But before you buy it, I mean, which would encumber you potentially to any of the problems that the building you're buying all of it.
Yep.
Right. So all of this, that's the due diligence part of that, right? Is,
That's
hey,
the due
before you
diligence.
buy this property, let us get in there and make sure you know what you're buying and all the things that go along with it.
I will
Exactly.
say that is definitely an ideal scenario, but we do run into projects quite often actually where a developer might already own a piece of property, find that they want to make better use of it, or it's underutilized. And so they're looking at these tools to maybe make something more of this property or this building that they're working with. And so those sins of the past that have been associated with the building have been there the whole time. And so now we're kind of working in the middle of the process where they already have the project. They've already invested in the property. And so now they've engaged with a company like TriTerra or maybe a company like Revitalize to make it financially make sense for this new development. So yes, I definitely agree when it comes to a project. If we can identify the certain things that we need to do before any initial investment is made, that's great. We love those developments.
But sometimes.
So that we avoid any costs that could be associated with something that is maybe a previous laundromat or a previous gas station. And,
Right.
and that just turns into that multi-year process like you had talked about.
Makes sense. Well, I'm going to give a tip of the cap to our friends at Wagoner Financial. Whether you're just starting out planning for retirement or anywhere in between, Wagoner is here to help you make smart financial decisions. They offer comprehensive customized planning from investment strategies and tax solutions to insurance, accounting, and real estate planning. Wagoner is dedicated to supporting you, your family, your business, and your future. Using their unique team approach and maximizing each member's specializations, they ensure that someone will have an answer to your question and is ready to help. Schedule a consultation by visiting wagoner-financial.com or give them a call at 517-853-3367. So who tend to be the early players, right? So you've got an owner of a property saying, I have this plan, but before I get too deep into it, I need to figure out what I've got. You mentioned Revitalize tends to be the kind of gatherer of all of the incentives and opportunities and grants and loans and things of that nature. And you at TriTerra talk about the physical health of the structure and the land and all that kind of stuff. Do you tend to be the two types of people that get involved at the first stages, or do you bring a couple other friends along with you, or how does the process begin?
I would say that's fair. Obviously, when we're talking about any level of development, you're going to have partnership involved, and an environmental consultant, a grant consultant is a great start. But when we're looking at costs or potentially the vision of what a project could be, we're talking about involving contractors, maybe an architect to get some preliminary design. So there is a level of investment and planning that goes into these developments before we start talking real numbers, actually putting in an application and speaking with the state about incentives.
Got it. And so how long does your process tend to take? And what percentage of the time is it a go versus a no-go? What decisions what are the deliverables? How does a conversation go before things really progress in almost a public light?
Well, we always like to try and make projects go. Let me preface with that. But timeline varies a lot. Depending on the project, have you completed all of your due diligence? Where are you in the process of your project? Is it a redevelopment? Are you building, are you rehabbing an existing building? All these play a factor in the timeline. I would say for just Brownfield, though, 4 to 6 months.
Okay.
And that's an aggressive timeline. But keep in mind, we have to gather everything up front. And then it also has to work its way through municipal approval. So there's one city council meeting it goes to. It can go to a BRA, a DDA. And all of these take time, and they might not line up perfectly. So it might get delayed a month.
Right. That's true. These governmental entities that, some require, depending on the use, special use permitting, approvals of brownfield. So just for the layperson, why don't you talk a little bit about what brownfield means, what is TIF, and why is it a good thing?
That's fair.
Yeah. So when we talk about brownfield TIF or brownfield tax increment financing, it is a mechanism to allow developers to capture future taxes, incremental taxes. So say you have a piece of property. It's an old building. It's worth X amount today. You want to make an investment into it, put some apartments up top, redo the commercial floor. It'll increase its taxable value. You can capture that increment to pay for certain eligible activities that you've invested into that property. So the demolition costs, gut rehabilitation, asbestos and lead abatement. So overall, it's a mechanism to allow a developer to offset the cost too between rehabbing that existing building or building new in a farm field.
Right. So you have the but for
Yes.
this tax, right? So if it costs me $500,000 to build it over here, or $650,000 to rehab this old building, there's $150,000 gap,
Right.
in doing that. But if we can get density and walkability and repurposing an existing building versus gobbling up a green field,
Yes.
so there needs to be a mechanism to do that. And it's not. And just I'm spoon feeding this because I've been in enough of these conversations that there's just such a negative stereotype over tax increment financing. The community tends to think that they're paying a rich developer to build something that they want, that they're going to make a profit off of. But it's really it is a universally known tool that allows us to repurpose and clean up, right? You said asbestos and lead, and you've got, contamination under, you get talked about laundry. I learned that laundromats have forever, leached into, the soils and things, and gas stations have underground tanks and all those kinds of things. It does the community good for those things to be correctly cleaned up and repurposed and, scrub that land and make it safe for the next inhabitants. And so the developer needs to do all of that work, and it's tightly regulated. You talked about eligible activities. Someone mentioned that earlier on. So it is defined, and at this BRA, the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, that approves a brownfield, declares what needs to be done and what qualifies, and it needs to happen. And then receipts are turned in, and the developer gets a reduction in their taxes, essentially reimbursement of their taxes. So if the taxes on a property were $50,000 a year, then after it's built, it goes to $200,000 a year. They nibble away at that increment, don't pay that $200,000 a year until they get their $150,000 back for the work that it required, the extra expenses that fell into those eligible activities. Sorry, I just wanted to give that little
nailed it. Yeah,
primer out there, because you see it all over the place. People are like, I'm not paying my tax money to have that developer, turn this building into apartments. It's like, well, it doesn't really work that way. And I don't think we can say it often enough that it is good to get these the contaminants out of our lives.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. And it's a unique incentive and widely used all over. And I think it's incredibly important that we do use it in downtowns, existing buildings, and like you said, combat kind of urban sprawl.
Right on. Well, let me thank our friends at Keller Williams. We all need a place to call home, and Chris Silker of Keller Williams Advantage and Team offers the expertise that you're looking for. He's helped clients navigate the complicated world of real estate in mid-Michigan for over 10 years, providing the best information possible at the right time to empower the best decisions. Whether you're a first-time home buyer looking for a local expert to guide you from point A to point B, searching for an income property in the competitive Lansing market, right-sizing your life, or searching for your dream home, Chris Silker and the Advantage and Team is the name to trust in Greater Lansing real estate. Visit advantageandteam.kw.com or give Chris Silker a call directly at 517-242-9251 today to find the home of your dreams. So do you have any real-world examples of getting involved, collaborating, and helping a developer or someone who has an idea, maybe a good story and a bad story, or I don't know, mistakes that were made, or money that was saved, or information that was delivered that was unexpected?
I can start with a bad story maybe, and then we'll follow up with a good one.
Great.
So I guess without getting into specifics, we do actually have a joint client here in Lansing that purchased a property, and something we advise clients, if we can help it on the front end, is go through that due diligence, look at the history of a property. Don't just pay for it cash, go through the process. And in this instance, the developer came to us after they had purchased the building. They purchased it for cash. It was all paid off. We went through the process of, looking at the history of the building, testing it, and there is a lot that needs to be done to this building. And unfortunately, it's limiting their ability to actually develop the property at all. The costs are so significant. And so in this case, although we weren't involved from the very beginning before the property was purchased, it's a good example as to why you should go through that extra due diligence before you start spending your money, because it might not be the right site for what you want to do.
Got it. Okay.
Wow, I get to be the good guy.
Yeah, I like that. Go ahead.
So we already highlighted Brick Row, but another one that comes to mind would be Neogen, right down the street.
Yep.
Neogen took on the redevelopment of an adjoining parking lot. Doing some digging, it was contaminated. There's a lot of contaminated soils, an old rail yard. So to address that, we utilized tax increment financing to help that soil disposal cost and to help get that development spurred to close that gap. So I think Neogen's a prime example of utilizing brownfield TIF, and at the end of the day, too, keeping jobs here.
Right, exactly. Fantastic. So if I'm a listener, I guess, what would you want to tell them? I think you already said it earlier on, but what how would you get this process started? When would you get this process started? What's your advice to people that are listening who are looking at buying property and turning it into something?
I would say the earlier the better. If you're looking at purchasing a parcel of land, whether it be vacant or it has a building on it, get an environmental consultant involved. TriTerra. We can start with due diligence, find out what that property has been through, what was there in the past, does it need a cleanup, are you eligible for brownfield TIF? And then we can start that process and go from there.
Got it.
Yeah, I think often people don't realize that a lot of planning can be done before any investment is made in a development. Simply looking into the history of the building or adjoining parcels of the property that might have had history of said things like a laundromat or a gas station automatically lend themselves to, okay, there's going to be some additional costs here. We should think about whether or not this is even the right site for what I want to do. So to Connor's point, there's a certain level of digging that you should be doing before you're making any major investments like purchasing a property.
Right on. Okay. So Reece, how can people get involved with Revitalize, learn more, request your services? How do they get in touch with you? Sure.
So we don't have anything fancy like socials or a website or anything, but if you want to reach out, you have questions, you can reach out at revitalization.inc@gmail.com. Again, we're a small mom and pop shop. We do a lot of our business word of mouth, working with communities. Honestly, if you throw our name out there to your local community or state program, they probably heard of us.
Got it. RevitalizeInc@gmail.com?
Revitalize.inc@gmail.com.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And Connor, how about TriTerra?
At TriTerra.us, and shout out to our marketing team, Hannah and Hannah. Can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn.
Fantastic. You guys have a great story. We really appreciate what you do because, again, I think we all cheer, like I said in the intro, for groundbreakings and ribbon cuttings, and we all want shiny things in our community, but it takes a lot of work before the public even knows something's happening, and you guys are a big part of that. So thanks for sharing your story.
Thank you.
I'd like to give a final shout out to all of our loyal sponsors: Wagoner Financial, Good Marketing, Keller Williams Advantage and Team, Michigan Rise, Kirk Byron State Farm Insurance, and the attorneys at Foster Swift. All great people that are worth the call. And if you found the show as a one-off, I want to remind you to like and follow and subscribe to Michigan Reimagine on YouTube, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, pretty much anywhere you find your podcasts. This is Chris Buck signing off for Michigan Reimagine.